The job posting appeared on marinejobs.net at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday. I know the exact time because I'd been refreshing the page every 20 minutes for 6 weeks. Merchant Marine Navigator positions don't come up often, and when they do, they're gone within hours. Competition is brutal, but my certification was about to expire, my unemployment was running out, and my ex-wife's lawyer had just sent another letter about overdue child support. I clicked on the listing before even reading the full description. Navigator needed, immediate deployment, MV Hecate, private research vessel. Route, San Diego to Samoa Station, 12-day transit. Compensation, $28,000. For 12 days of work, that was more than triple the normal rate. I read it 3 times looking for the catch. Long-haul cargo routes to Samoa usually paid $8,000 to $10,000 for a similar journey. This wasn't just good money, this was suspicious money. But my bank account had $1,247 in it. My daughter's birthday was in 2 weeks, and the certification renewal I desperately needed cost $3,000 that I didn't have. I submitted my application at 11:51 p.m. By 6:30 a.m., I had an acceptance email, a contract, and a $5,000 deposit in my account labeled Signing Bonus MV Hecate. The email signature read, Captain Elizabeth Voss, Meridian Deep Ocean Research. I'd never heard of Meridian Deep Ocean Research. A quick Google search showed a bare-bones website with generic stock photos of research vessels and a vague mission statement about advancing human understanding of unexplored maritime zones. No client list, no published research, no news articles. The domain registration was only 8 months old. My buddy Derek called that morning. He'd worked navigators on research vessels for a decade. $28K for 12 days, he said when I told him. What's the actual route? San Diego to Samoa Station, pretty standard Pacific crossing. And they need celestial navigation experience specifically? That's what the listing said.
He was quiet for a moment. Jake, nobody uses celestial anymore. GPS has made it obsolete except for backup certification. If they're specifically requesting it, what? It means they're planning to go somewhere GPS doesn't work, or somewhere they don't want GPS tracking them. It's a research vessel. Probably just want someone with old school skills in case of equipment failure. Maybe. He didn't sound convinced. Just keep your charts updated, and if the course stops making sense, trust your gut. I should have asked him what he meant by that, but I didn't. 72 hours later, I was standing on a dock in San Diego, watching the Hecate rock gently against her moorings. She was a mid-sized research vessel, maybe 200 feet long, with the white and blue paint scheme typical of scientific ships. But something about her seemed off. The hull was too clean, like she'd just come out of dry dock. No rust, no barnacles, no wear from extended time at sea. For a research vessel supposedly engaged in deep ocean work, she looked brand new. A woman in her 50s stood at the gangway, clipboard in hand. Short gray hair, weathered face, the kind of posture that came from decades at sea. Jake Morrison? That's me. Captain Voss, welcome aboard. Your cabin's on the second deck, starboard side. Stow your gear and meet me in the navigation room in 30 minutes. We cast off at 1400 hours. The crew was small. I counted 9 people total during the safety briefing. Captain Voss, myself, 2 engineers, 3 research scientists I wasn't introduced to, and 2 deckhands who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Everyone was polite but distant. No small talk, no jokes, just efficient, quiet professionalism. The navigation room was state-of-the-art. Dual GPS systems, radar, sonar, electronic chart display, satellite communications, and mounted on the wall, looking almost ceremonial, was a classic chart table with paper navigation charts, a sextant, and a complete set of celestial navigation tools.
Captain Voss handed me a manila folder. Your route plan. I opened it and found a series of waypoints plotted from San Diego to Samoa Station, a small research outpost about 2,400 nautical miles southwest. The route looked standard at first glance: great circle navigation, taking advantage of currents and avoiding major shipping lanes. But something bothered me about the waypoint intervals. They were oddly specific, not rounded to logical coordinates, but precise to the hundredth of a degree. And they were evenly spaced, exactly 47.3 nautical miles apart. "Why such specific spacing?" I asked. Captain Voss didn't look up from her own console. "Survey grid requirements. We're collecting oceanic data at regular intervals. Just follow the waypoints in sequence, log our position every 2 hours, document any deviations." "What kind of data?" "Magnetic field variations, water column density, subsurface acoustic patterns." She finally looked at me. "You're not here to understand the research, Morrison. You're here to get us to each waypoint precisely and on schedule. Can you do that?" I nodded. We cast off at exactly 1400 hours. The first 3 days were uneventful. We followed the waypoint sequence southwest from San Diego, making steady progress at 12 knots. The weather was calm, the Pacific living up to its name. I took regular celestial sightings at dawn and dusk, triangulating our position with the sun and stars. The GPS and my celestial calculations matched within acceptable margins. The scientists spent most of their time in a sealed laboratory on the lower deck. I never saw what they were doing. They emerged only for meals, quiet and focused, speaking to each other in technical jargon I didn't understand. On the 4th night, during my 0200 to 0600 watch, I noticed something odd. We were approaching waypoint 17. According to the GPS, we should arrive in 45 minutes. But when I took a celestial reading using the stars, my calculation put us 17 nautical miles north of where the GPS said we were. I double-checked my math, checked again. The celestial reading was correct, I was certain of it, but the GPS disagreed. I logged both positions and made a note. Possible GPS error, 17 nautical miles discrepancy, celestial navigation primary. I adjusted course to match the celestial position.
When I checked the GPS again 10 minutes later, it had corrected itself. Now it showed we were exactly where my celestial navigation said we should be. Like it had been wrong, realized it, and updated. But GPS doesn't do that. GPS receives signals from satellites. It doesn't self-correct based on reality. It just reports what the satellites tell it. I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to rationalize what I'd seen. Atmospheric interference, maybe, or a glitch in the processing software. I made another note in the log. GPS anomaly resolved, continuing on course. I didn't mention it to Captain Voss during the morning briefing. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to seem incompetent on day 4 of a lucrative contract. The anomalies started happening every night after that. Waypoint 21, GPS showed us 12 nautical miles east of celestial position. After I logged the discrepancy, it corrected itself within minutes. Waypoint 24, GPS disagreed with celestial by 23 nautical miles. Corrected. Waypoint 28, 31 nautical miles. Corrected. I started taking screenshots of the GPS readings before and after the corrections, building evidence. But evidence of what? Equipment malfunction? Some kind of calibration issue? On day 7, I finally brought it up with Captain Voss. "The GPS has been showing position errors every night," I said. "It self-corrects when I verify with celestial navigation, but the discrepancies are getting larger." She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "How much larger?" "Last night it was over 30 miles off." "But it corrected?" "Yes, but then it's functioning within acceptable parameters.
GPS can be affected by ionospheric interference, solar activity, magnetic anomalies. That's why we have you aboard, Morrison, to verify with Celestial when electronics fail us. Continue as you have been. She turned back to her charts, clearly ending the conversation. That night, approaching waypoint 35, the discrepancy was 47.3 nautical miles. Exactly the distance between waypoints. I sat at the chart table, staring at that number. It couldn't be coincidence. The errors were following a pattern, escalating in a precise mathematical sequence. And they always corrected themselves after I logged the celestial position, like something was testing me, or training me. I pulled out the original route plan and studied the waypoint coordinates more carefully. That's when I noticed something I'd missed before. The waypoints weren't following a great circle route to Samoa. They were forming a straight line. A perfect, geometrically impossible straight line across the curved surface of the Earth. Great circle navigation, the shortest distance between 2 points on a sphere, creates a curve when plotted on a flat map. But these waypoints, when I connected them with a ruler, formed an absolutely straight line, zero deviation. You can't sail in a straight line on a curved planet. It's physically impossible. Unless you're not sailing on a curved planet. Unless you're sailing through something else. I felt my chest tighten. I pulled up our current position on the electronic chart and zoomed out, tracing our path from San Diego. The line of waypoints extended southwest, perfectly straight, passing through the empty ocean between California and Samoa. I zoomed out further. The line continued beyond Samoa Station. It kept going, through thousands of miles of open Pacific, through shipping lanes and island chains, through the Coral Sea and the Tasman Sea. I zoomed out to show the entire Pacific Ocean. The line didn't stop at Australia. It continued through the Indian Ocean, through the Atlantic, through Africa and Europe, a perfectly straight line wrapping around the entire planet. And when I traced it far enough, it came back to San Diego. A complete circle, except it wasn't a circle on the globe. It was a straight line in space that only appeared circular because I was plotting it on a sphere. My hands were shaking. I grabbed the original manila folder Captain Voss had given me and flipped through the pages. At the very back, clipped to the inside cover, was a single sheet I hadn't noticed before. It was a mathematical proof. Dense equations and geometric diagrams I barely understood. But at the top, in handwritten notes, was a phrase. Shortest path between overlapping geometries requires navigation through adjacent dimensional manifold. And at the bottom, a single sentence. Celestial navigation essential beyond waypoint 40. GPS signal loss expected. Do not deviate from plotted course. We were at waypoint 36. I had 4 waypoints before GPS would stop working entirely. 4 waypoints before I'd be navigating purely by the stars, following a course that defied the geometry of Earth, heading toward a destination the paperwork called Samoa Station, but that I was now certain was something else entirely. I heard footsteps in the corridor. Captain Voss appeared in the doorway. "You found the additional notes," she said, not a question. "What the hell is this? Where are we actually going?" She closed the door behind her and sat down across from the chart table. "We're going exactly where the contract stated, Samoa Station. You'll be home in 5 days, Morrison, with $28,000 and no obligation to understand what you participated in." "We're not sailing to Samoa. This course doesn't go to Samoa." "It does, just not the Samoa you're thinking of." She leaned forward. "The Pacific Ocean is the largest navigable surface on Earth, 16,000 miles at its widest point, millions of square miles of empty water. Do you really think it's all just water?" "I don't understand." "Space folds, Morrison. Dimensions overlap. Most of the time, we're locked into our standard geometry, 3 spatial dimensions, 1 temporal. But there are places, specific coordinates, where the fold is thin enough to navigate through, to take shortcuts, to reach versions of locations that exist in adjacent geometries. I stared at her. You're talking about alternate dimensions. I'm talking about navigation, which is your job, the only job you were hired to do. She tapped the chart. GPS works by calculating your position relative to satellites orbiting Earth, but those satellites don't orbit the space we're entering. After waypoint 40, you'll need to navigate by stars, which shine through all adjacent geometries. Their light crosses dimensional boundaries. That's why celestial navigation still works when GPS fails. This is insane!
Is it? You've been logging the GPS errors for days. You've seen the corrections. You've plotted the course. She stood up. In 3 hours, we'll reach waypoint 37. You'll take your celestial reading, log our position, and set course for waypoint 38. That's all you need to do. All you were hired to do. She left me alone in the navigation room. I sat there for a long time, trying to process what she'd told me. Part of me wanted to believe it was a psychological experiment, some kind of test to see how navigators handle stress or uncertainty. But the mathematics didn't lie. The course was impossible within standard geometry, and the GPS errors. I pulled up the satellite signal strength display. All systems normal, strong connections to 8 different GPS satellites. But when I checked the satellite identification numbers against the official GPS constellation database, none of them matched. We weren't receiving signals from Earth's GPS satellites anymore. We were receiving signals from somewhere else's satellites. At waypoint 37, I took my celestial reading. The stars were in the correct positions. Polaris at 33 degrees above the northern horizon, Sirius bright in the southwest, the Southern Cross barely visible low in the south, standard northern Pacific sky for our latitude. But the GPS disagreed by 94.6 nautical miles, exactly double the waypoint spacing. I logged the celestial position. The GPS corrected itself, and something changed. The ocean looked different. The color was slightly off, less blue, more gray-green. The wave patterns had altered, moving in directions that didn't match the wind. When I stepped out onto the deck to take another sextant reading, the air smelled wrong. Still salty, still marine, but with an underlying scent like ozone and copper. One of the deckhands was securing equipment nearby. I approached him. "Do you notice anything different about the water?" I asked. He glanced at me, then quickly away. "Don't look at the water too long. Captain's orders." "Why not?" Because you might see what's under it. He finished tying down a storage container and hurried back inside. I looked at the water. At first, I saw nothing unusual, just the normal gray-green surface, rolling swells, occasional whitecaps. But as I stared, I began to notice something moving beneath the surface. Not fish, not whales, something massive and geometrically wrong, with angles that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. I looked away quickly, my eyes watering. Back in the navigation room, I plotted our course to waypoint 38. The line extended southwest into empty ocean, or what the charts showed as empty ocean. But I was beginning to understand that the charts were lies, comforting fictions drawn on a geometry that didn't fully describe the space we were moving through. Days 8 through 10 passed in a blur of navigation and growing wrongness. At waypoint 40, exactly as Captain Voss had predicted, the GPS died. Not gradually, not with warnings or error messages. The
The signal strength just dropped to 0 across all satellites simultaneously, and the screen went dark. I was navigating purely by celestial now, sextant readings every 6 hours, dead reckoning between fixes, plotting our position on paper charts, ancient techniques that predated electronics by thousands of years. And the stars were wrong. Not completely wrong. Polaris was still north, Sirius still bright, the major constellations still recognizable. But there were additional stars, faint ones that didn't match any star chart I'd ever studied. They formed patterns between the familiar constellations, like someone had added extra points to a connect-the-dots puzzle. I tried to ignore them, used only the stars I recognized for my calculations, but even those seemed slightly displaced from where they should be. Polaris was at 34 degrees above the horizon, when it should be at 33. Betelgeuse appeared 2 degrees east of its proper position. The ocean wasn't blue anymore. It was dark gray, almost black, even under direct sunlight. The waves moved in patterns that violated fluid dynamics, sometimes flowing upward, sometimes freezing in mid-crest before crashing in slow motion. I stopped looking at it, followed the deckhand's advice. The scientists had locked themselves in their laboratory. I heard strange sounds coming from below deck, mechanical humming mixed with something organic, like breathing.
On day 11, approaching Waypoint 47, I found Captain Voss in the chart room at 0300. She was plotting something on a chart I'd never seen before. Not a navigation chart, but some kind of multi-dimensional diagram with layers of transparent sheets showing overlapping geometries. "How much longer?" I asked. She looked up. "We'll reach the fold point at Waypoint 52, then a simple crossing, maybe 30 minutes of subjective time, and we'll emerge at Samoa Station. Well, a version of it. The research team collects their specimens, we reverse course, and you're home within a week." "And then what? I just go back to normal life? Pretend this didn't happen?" "Most do. The money helps." She studied me. "You've handled this better than most navigators. The last one we hired had a breakdown at Waypoint 43. Started seeing his dead wife in the water. We had to sedate him." "What happens to the ones who don't handle it well?" She didn't answer. I went back to the navigation room and took another celestial reading. According to my calculations, we were at 23 degrees 14 minutes south, 167 degrees 38 minutes west. But when I checked that position on a standard chart, it put us in the middle of the Tasman Sea, over 2,000 miles from where we should be. The waypoints were converging. The straight line through curved space was tightening, approaching the fold point Captain Voss had mentioned. At Waypoint 50, I saw land. Not on the charts, not on any map, but visible from the deck. A dark coastline rising from the wrong-colored ocean. Mountains that seemed to shift perspective when I looked at them directly. Buildings along the shore that were simultaneously ruined and intact, flickering between states like a corrupted video file. "Don't look at the shore," Captain Voss said behind me. "We're crossing a resonance zone, multiple versions of reality overlapping. What you're seeing is real, just not real in our standard geometry. It'll fade as we pass." "What is that place?" "An island. Dozens of islands, actually, all occupying the same coordinates in different adjacent dimensions. Most are uninhabited. Some," she trailed off, "just don't look." But I couldn't help it. I saw movement on the shore, figures that might have been human, might have been something else. They were waving at us, or warning us. The distinction seemed meaningless. One of the scientists emerged from below deck, carrying a sealed container. He looked worse than when we'd departed, skin pale, eyes bloodshot, hands trembling. He saw me staring and quickly looked away. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Don't talk to me,"
he whispered. "Please, don't acknowledge me. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be in the other room, the one that doesn't exist. And if you acknowledge me, then I have to choose which one is real, and I can't. I can't." Captain Voss grabbed him firmly. "Back to the lab, Dr. Chen. Now." He fled. "What the hell is happening to your crew?" I demanded. "The crossing affects people differently," she said calmly. "Those with certain mental flexibilities can perceive multiple geometries simultaneously. It's disorienting but harmless. You're a navigator, Morrison. You're trained to think in abstract coordinates, to visualize three-dimensional space from two-dimensional charts. Your mind is already prepared for this. Theirs," she shrugged, "they'll stabilize once we complete the crossing." Waypoint 51. The ocean was doing impossible things now. I watched from the bridge as the water folded upward, creating walls and valleys that defied gravity. Our ship sailed through them like they were normal swells, but the geometry made my head hurt. The additional stars I'd noticed earlier were brighter now. They formed clear constellations, patterns I didn't recognize but that seemed somehow familiar, like childhood memories I couldn't quite access. I checked my watch. It was 1500 hours, but the sun was in the wrong position, too high, too bright, and casting shadows in 3 different directions simultaneously. At the chart table, I plotted our position for Waypoint 52, the fold point, the place where we'd cross fully into whatever geometry Samoa Station existed in. My hands were shaking as I drew the line. Then I noticed something that made my breath catch. The waypoints didn't stop at Samoa Station. I flipped through the chart folder, through pages I'd thought were just reference materials. They contained additional waypoints, 53, 54, 55, continuing in the same perfectly straight line, and more after that, hundreds of them. The line didn't end. It went on forever, a straight path through folded space, through geometries that overlapped and diverged. And at various points along this infinite line, there were annotations: Samoa Station, geometry A3, Marseille Harbor, geometry B7, Arctic Research Station, geometry F2. The same locations, repeated across different dimensions, the same names, but not the same places. And at the very end of the document, so far down the waypoint sequence that it would take years to reach, was a single notation: San Diego, geometry prime, origin point, return not guaranteed. I heard the door open behind me. "You weren't supposed to see those pages," Captain Voss said quietly. I turned to face her. "This isn't a research mission. This is a one-way trip." "Not necessarily. We do return, usually." She moved to the chart table. "But each crossing changes you, aligns you more with the geometries we pass through than the one you came from. Most navigators complete 3 or 4 missions before they can't go back, before their home geometry rejects them." "You're recruiting people to navigate these routes permanently?" "We're recruiting people who can, who have the specific mental flexibility. It's rare, Morrison. 1 in maybe 50,000 navigators can do what you're doing without going insane, and the network needs navigators. These fold routes are the only way to move cargo, research, personnel between adjacent dimensions. You think parallel worlds exist in isolation? They don't. They trade, they communicate. They need people who can cross the boundaries. I want to go home." "You will, after we complete this run, but you'll come back. They always come back." She met my eyes. "Because you've seen it now. You've seen that the world, the universe, is bigger than you ever imagined. And knowing that, knowing there are infinite versions of everything, how do you go back to believing your version is the only real one?" I didn't answer. At 1837 hours, we reached Waypoint 52. The ship lurched, not physically. The deck remained stable, the engine steady. But reality lurched, tilting in a direction that didn't have a name. For a moment, I saw everything overlapping. 5 versions of the navigation room occupying the same space, with 5 versions of me standing at the chart table, all wearing slightly different expressions. Then it snapped into focus. We were through. The ocean was blue again, normal blue. The sky was clear, the sun in the correct position. I checked my celestial readings, and they matched the GPS perfectly, which had somehow reactivated, showing a strong signal from satellites I recognized. According to our position, we were exactly where we should be, approaching Samoa Station.
I looked out the window and saw it in the distance, a small research outpost on an island, white buildings against green jungle, exactly like the photographs on the official Samoa Station website. Except, I knew it wasn't the same one. This was Samoa Station Geometry A3, a version adjacent to our reality, but not our reality. We docked 6 hours later. The scientists disembarked with their sealed containers. Local personnel, if they could be called that, loaded new containers aboard. Everyone was human, everyone spoke English, everything looked normal. But I could feel the difference. A subtle wrongness in the angles of the buildings, in the way sunlight reflected off the water, in the rhythm of the waves against the shore. We departed after 8 hours of loading. Captain Voss handed me a new route plan, waypoints for the return journey, a different sequence, a different fold point, a different path through overlapping geometries. Same rate, she said, 28,000, plus a bonus if you're interested in signing on for future runs. We need reliable navigators. I should have said no. I should have demanded to return exactly the way we came, to backtrack through the fold point and return to my original reality. But I looked at the route plan and saw new waypoints I'd never navigated, new fold points, new geometries to explore. And I realized Captain Voss was right. I couldn't go back to believing my world was the only one. Couldn't go back to simple navigation on a simple ocean following simple physics. We cast off from Samoa Station Geometry A3 at 0600 the next morning. I'm writing this on day 15 of what was supposed to be a 12-day transit. We've crossed through 2 more fold points. Each time the ocean changes. Each time the stars shift slightly. Each time I can feel myself changing too. Thinking in dimensions I didn't have language for before. Perceiving space in ways my training never prepared me for. According to the GPS, we're approaching San Diego. According to my celestial calculations, we're nowhere near it. According to the chart that Captain Voss uses, the one with overlapping transparent layers, we're approaching a San Diego, just not necessarily the one I left from. My daughter's birthday was 3 days ago, I think. Time gets strange when you cross between geometries. My ex-wife has probably tried to call me. My certification renewal is overdue. My apartment lease might be expired. But none of that matters anymore, because I'm not sure I'm going back to the reality where those things exist.
Captain Voss offered me a permanent position this morning, Navigator for the Meridian Deep Ocean Research Fleet. 6 runs a year through various fold routes, each one taking me further from Geometry Prime, my home geometry, and deeper into the network of adjacent dimensions. The pay is $180,000 annually. I signed the contract an hour ago. I tell myself it's about the money, about financial security, about taking care of my daughter, about stable employment in an uncertain economy. But that's a lie. The truth is simpler and more terrifying. I don't want to stop navigating. The waypoints are calling to me now. I can feel them in my head, a network of coordinates spreading through infinite space. Straight lines through curved geometries, paths that don't exist until someone trained to perceive them charts the course. We'll reach San Diego in 4 hours. I don't know which version yet. Captain Voss says it depends on the precise moment we cross the fold point, on atmospheric conditions and magnetic alignments and factors I'm only beginning to understand. I might see my apartment, might recognize the marina, might even run into people I know. But they won't quite be the same people, and I won't quite be the same me. The navigator who left San Diego 15 days ago believed in a single reality with single coordinates and predictable navigation. The navigator who's returning understands that every point in space is actually infinite points, layered on top of each other, accessible if you know the right angles to approach from. I've started seeing the additional stars even during the day now, faint but present, mapping out constellations that don't exist in standard celestial charts. Captain Voss says that's normal for navigators who've crossed multiple fold points. She says eventually I'll be able to navigate purely by those stars, ignoring the familiar constellations entirely. She says some navigators go so deep into the network that they can't perceive standard geometry anymore. They become permanent crossers, living on ships that travel between worlds, never able to return to where they started, because home is a concept that only works in single geometries. I'm not there yet, but I can feel it starting. Last night, I looked at my reflection in the navigation room window and saw 5 versions of myself, all slightly different, all occupying the same space. For a moment, I couldn't remember which one I was supposed to be. Captain Voss says that's normal too. She says I'm adapting perfectly. She says I'm going to be one of the best navigators in the fleet. I believe her, because when I close my eyes now, I don't see darkness. I see waypoints, infinite waypoints, forming straight lines to everywhere and nowhere, connecting all possible versions of all possible places. And all I have to do is chart the course.